Alex and Tom's Hardware, and I'm here checking out the new Nexus 6P, the latest Nexus phone from Google. One of two phones they've released this year. This year we have the Nexus 6P, which is this larger device, and we also have the Nexus 5X, which is a slightly smaller device coming out. The 6P is made by Huawei, which is a Chinese phone manufacturer that you may or may not have heard of. And while they don't have a lot of presence in the North American market, they have been offering lower end devices over here with some carriers. And of course, in other parts of the world, they've been offering higher end devices for quite some time. So the 6P is a premium all-metal device. And actually really well made. The fit and the finish of the materials is excellent. So this is an all metal back, as you can see. The sides are metal as well. So it's a focus in there. You can see it's definitely a premium crafted device, and I'm very impressed by the finish of this. And this is the graphite model, which is my favorite color, which is almost like a sort of gunmetal color. So one thing to note, even though it is nearly all metal, the bottom part here is plastic. And it's disappointing that the color is not exactly the same, though I guess it would be hard to get plastic to look identical to this metal finish here. And around top here we have the camera module, camera bump. When people saw this initially, they thought that the bump looked pretty unsightly, but if you look at it from the side, you can see that that bump for the camera is actually not that high, and I actually think it looks pretty cool. The camera module is here, and obviously more plastic for the antennas and reception and things like that. It's definitely a big vote of confidence from Google that they decided to pick Huawei to make the new premium Nexus, and hopefully this will get this Chinese OEM some more visibility in the North American market. Maybe they'll release other devices, other premium devices over here. So it's running Android 6 Marshmallow, the latest version of Android, which is of course what the Nexus phones are for, is to showcase the latest version of Android. It comes in 3 different colors, the graphite like I mentioned, and it's also available in aluminum and a frost white color. There are 3 storage options, 32 gigs of internal storage, 64 gigs and 128 gigs. So it's nice to see that Google has started the base model with 32 gigs of storage. There's a SIM card slot here on the side, but there is no micro SD, which is been a standard on Nexus devices for some time. Let's flip around to the other side here. We can see the volume control, and we can see the textured power button. So very nice, again, buttons. Definitely one of the best looking phones to come out this year. It uses Qualcomm Snapdragon 810 SoC. Google says it's the version 2.1 processor, which I don't actually think is a new version of the processor. It runs at 2 gigahertz. It's an Octa-core SoC. It has an Adreno 430 GPU. 810 has been, criticized for being a hot running processor. I think that the OEMs have really learned how to manage the 810's heat output to allow it to perform at its maximum potential. It has 3 gigs of RAM, which seems to be the standard for most premium phones this year. So flipping around to front again, let me just unlock the phone. And I do actually want to show you that one extra feature that it has, and the Nexus 5X has as well, is the Nexus imprint fingerprint reader. So instead of like some of the other phones like the Note 5 that has the fingerprint reader on the front of the phone, or the Xperia Z5 which has a fingerprint reader on the power button, the fingerprint reader on the new Nexus phones is on the back here. So you basically just touch your finger to it and it unlocks the phone. So around front here we can see the 5.7-inch display. It has Gorilla Glass 4 in front of it. It's a WQHD AMOLED panel, so 2560 by 1440. It's 518 ppi, and as you can see, it has the characteristic saturated colors of an AMOLED display. one neat trick Google has added is if you go into the developer options, which you have to enable first, you can actually turn on what's called an sRGB mode, which is a more color accurate screen mode. So let me just turn that on. And I don't know if you can see in the video clearly, but the colors have got a lot muted and less saturated, which maybe doesn't look as impressive, but is actually probably more accurate. Again, something we need to test, so I can't tell you how accurate the display is in either mode, but it's nice that Google has decided to include that option. Its size, it's 159.3 millimeters tall, 77.8 millimeters wide, and 7.3 millimeters thick. So it's actually quite a slim device. Going to pull in last year's Nexus, the Nexus 6. As you can see, the Nexus 6 is a bigger device. It actually isn't any taller, even though it has a 6-inch display, but the 6P is actually considerably narrower than the Nexus 6, which does make it easier to hold in one hand, though it's still a big phone, so it isn't going to be as easy to use one-handedly. You're probably going to have to use two hands quite often. When you compare it to the Note 5, which also has a 5.7-inch display, you can see that Samsung's phone is more compact. It's not as tall, so it is a little easier to use in one hand. The screen-to-body ratio, which basically tells you how compact the device is, the Note 5 has a 76% screen-to-body ratio, which is one of the highest of phones currently available. So for a big phone, it's very compact. The 6P unfortunately only has a 72% screen-to-body ratio, which isn't that bad, but certainly that's one area that the Note 5 does beat the 6P. Around front, it has dual front-facing stereo speakers, a feature that many Android phones do not have apart from HTC's phones, well, other than the latest model, the A9, that does not have that. So it's great to see that the new Nexus phone has stereo speakers. I did mention the fingerprint reader. Flipping around back, I also want to talk about the battery. So it is a non-removable battery, which obviously for an all-metal unibody phone is going to be the case, but it's 3450 milliamp hours, so it's pretty big. Speaking of the Note 5 again, Note 5 has a 3000 milliamp hour battery, which from my experience of using this phone for some time now, gives you excellent battery life. So I can only imagine how much better the battery life on the Nexus 6P is going to be. Something we'll have to test, but Android Marshmallow, for example, has a new power-saving feature called Doze, which when the phone is left unused for a while, it actually shuts down even more background processes to extend the battery life even more. So I'm looking forward to testing out the 6P's battery. So on the bottom here you see the USB-C port, Type-C port, a new connection, new USB standard that's becoming more common on 2015 devices and will be almost standard on 2016 devices. There's only a few phones with it right now. There's the 6P, there's the 5X, and there's also the OnePlus 2. The Type-C connector, if you're not familiar with it, is a reversible connector, so it can be plugged in either way, and that solves one of the problems a lot of the times with not seeing exactly which way round the connector is supposed to go into the phone, and then maybe shoving it in backwards and then damaging the phone. It's also odd that different vendors had different standards of which way the USB connector went into the phone, so it's nice to see a new standard. Another good thing about the Nexus implementation of this is it supports a fast charging, so the charger that comes with the Nexus 6P is a 5 volt, 3 amp, 15 watt fast charger, so it uses USB Type-C fast charging. It's not Qualcomm quick charge. So Google's recognized one of the most important factors of a good quality camera, which has always been one of the Achilles heels of Nexus devices. They haven't actually had necessarily bad cameras, but they haven't been that good. The Nexus 6's camera was average, the Nexus 5's camera was average. So this actually has a new Sony sensor, one I'm not familiar with. It's called the IMX377, and it's actually a 12.3 megapixel sensor, so it's not as high resolution as some of the other high-end sensors in the market. But it actually has 1.55 micron pixels, so the actual pixel sizes, the pixels on the sensor that capture the light, are very large. Something that Apple has been doing for quite some time with their phones has been including these sensors that have very large pixel sizes, but not necessarily super high resolution, which means you get excellent low light performance. And I mean, keep in mind, this is still a 12 megapixel camera sensor, so you're still going to get pretty good quality, high resolution images. It's combined with an f2.0 lens, so it's not necessarily the widest aperture on the market, but still very good. So there's no optical image stabilization, but there is laser autofocus. And the reason for no OIS obviously is to make the camera module a little bit shorter, so the phone doesn't have to be as thick, or that bump on the back doesn't have to be as thick. And Google says that because the pixel size of the sensor is so good, even without image stabilization in low light, you're still going to get excellent performance. Again, something we're going to have to test out, but one thing, it did score a very high ranking on the DxO Mark. DxO Mark does sort of mobile phone camera testing, and it's actually the number 3 ranked phone out there. So the 6P definitely has a great camera, which we're going to have to get spend some more time with. So of course the ISP on the Snapdragon 810 is going to be better than the ISP in the Nexus 5X. It has a Snapdragon 808. So one feature that adds is a digital video stabilization is available on the 6P and is not available on the 5X. Around front we have an 8 megapixel camera. Again, it has pretty big pixels. It's 1.4 micron pixels, and it has an f2.4 aperture lens. So again, for front-facing camera for selfies, the camera is going to be pretty good in low light, and obviously that's something that Google is really focused on the new Nexus devices. As far as wireless connectivity, it supports Cat6 LTE, wireless AC. It has a 2x2 MIMO antenna, so the wireless Wi-Fi performance should be excellent. Overall, it's a very attractive, very impressive device, and certainly, in my opinion, the nicest Nexus device. The Nexus 6P isn't ridiculously expensive, and is still quite a bit less than other premium smartphones on the market. So, talking about pricing, in the US, the 6P, the 32 gig model is $500, which is a really good price considering an equivalent 32 gig Note 5 is going to be like a couple $100 more at least, and the iPhone 6s is going to be even more for larger storage capacity. You only pay an extra $50 for extra storage, so the 64 gig model is $550, and the 128 gig, which is great. I mean, there's not that many devices that come with 128 gigs of onboard storage, is $650. Unfortunately, in Canada, the price is quite a bit higher because the Canadian dollar has dropped in value. So you're looking at spending $700 for the 32 gig model in Canada, $750 for the 64 gig, and $850 for the 128 gig. But again, still cheaper than comparable premium devices on the market. One thing that's different between Canada and the US is in the US you can only buy this from the Google Play Store, but in Canada, along with the Google Play, you can actually buy this from carriers in Canada. Some of the major carriers that will be carrying it will be Bell, Rogers, Telus, and Wind Mobile, and there are some other smaller carriers that will be carrying the 6P as well. And on the carrier contract, 2-year contract, I've been told the price is going to be around $200, which again is a very good price for a premium device on a 2-year term. So this is Alex from Tom's Hardware. This has been a quick look at the new Nexus 6P, the latest Nexus device from Google. Initial impressions are very favorable, and I can certainly say with no reservations that if you're looking for a new premium device and you love Google, you like Android and looking for sort of a more stock Android, or not more, a stock Android experience, the 6P is the device to go with. Thanks for watching.